أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ثم بعثنا من بعده موسى وهارون إلى فرعون وملئه بآياتنا فاستكبروا وكانوا قوما مجرمين. فلما جاءهم الحق من عندنا قالوا إن هذا لسحر مبين. قال موسى أتقولون للحق لما جاءكم أسحر هذا ولا يفلح الساحرون. قالوا ما جئتنا لتلفتنا عما وجدنا عليه آباءنا وتكون لكم الكبرياء في الأرض وما نحن لكما بمؤمنين. فقال فرعون ائتوني بكل ساحر عليم. فلما جاء السحرة قال لهم موسى ألقوا ما أنتم ملقون. فلما ألقوا قال موسى ما جئتم به السحر إن الله سيبطله إن الله لا يصلح عمل المفسدين ويحق الله الحق بكلماته ولو كره المجرمون. صدق الله العلي العظيم.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد
وملئه.
أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله وسلم على سيدنا ونبينا محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين.
اللهم صل على محمد.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. Inshallah, we'll continue reflecting on the ayat of Surah Yunus. The surah that we mentioned, it's one of the chapters revealed in Mecca, and therefore it does address mostly the principles, usul. The repeated theme in the surah is the revelation of the Quran and the truthfulness of the Prophet ﷺ, and obviously the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not just as the creator, but also as the guide, as the maintainer, the sustainer. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, contrary to the belief of the mushrikeen, polytheists, who thought God created, but other forces in nature or other individuals or idols or whatever it may be are partners to God in certain levels of authority, maintaining things or sustaining and so on. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala declares frequently in the Holy Quran that He creates and He maintains and He sustains and He guides. Everything is deriving its power and existence through Him. La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. So these are concepts repeated in this chapter, as well as typically the chapters that are revealed in Mecca. The section we're up to is where the principles were given, warnings and glad tidings. Again, one of the styles of these chapters is the warnings and the glad tidings. So good news for those who are following the message and obeying God, obeying the messenger, and warnings for those who are constantly and consistently denying and opposing the Prophet ﷺ. Therefore, it came to a section where examples of previous nations are given, The first example we said was the example of Nabiullah Nuh ala nabina alayhi salam, Noah as referred to in English, peace be upon him, and how he invited his people. They denied, they constantly denied him. Eventually, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala destroyed the non-believers and saved the believers. Those who believed with him, who were only a few, were saved, and the rest, وَأَغْرَقْنَا, they were made to drown. So this is the first example. The next one, or before we move on to the next one, just a quick note on Ayah 74, which is still about not just Qawm Nuh, but general. So ثُمَّ بَعَثْنَا مِن بَعْدِهِ رُسُلًا. So before it comes to the next example, which is in Ayah 75, Nabiullah Musa ala nabina wa alayhi salam, the Ayah 74 declares a very general rule or a general behavior of nations that was common to most nations. ثم بعثنا من بعده رسلا. After Nuh alayhi salam, there were messengers, many messengers, إلى قومهم, to their people. They came to them with clear proofs. بالبينات فجاءوهم بالبينات. They did not believe. فما كانوا ليؤمنوا بما كذبوا من قبل. We said this, فما كانوا ليؤمنوا بما كذبوا من قبل, is not necessarily referring to the same people. If they were the same people, then it would be, the ayah would not be valid about the people of Nuh ala nabina alayhi salam, because the ones who were saved were the believers, and the ones who did not believe and denied him were destroyed. So now, is it the same people that are not going to believe or did not believe in what they denied before? So the ayah says, they did not believe in what they denied before. Now, there are a few suggestions. One is, they did not believe in what the other group denied before, not them. So the pronouns are not referring to the same group of people. When it says they did not believe, it's speaking of the current people. And when it says they denied before, it's speaking of the other people, the ones who denied before. Although it does not, this style is not very eloquent, if you want. The balaghiyan, it is not the most ideal way of putting the sentence, because it is confusing, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would never confuse us with the message. So the other suggestion seems to make more sense, and we have a hadith from the Prophet and Ahlul Bayt salawatullah wa salamu alayhim ajma'in in this regards that confirms that this other meaning is what is meant to be. And these ahadith are suggesting that this ayah is speaking of the realm of the creation of ruh. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created the ruh and created the body. Then He merged the two. He put the soul into the body. And at the time of the creation of ruh, the ruh is the higher being and the conscious one. So at the time of the creation of ruh, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala declared His creation and the fact that His lordship to the ruh, to all the arwah, to all the souls. And some of them agreed and accepted immediately. The pioneer in that was Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, This is why in the Quran, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَإِذْ أَخَذْنَا مِنَ النَّبِيِّينَ مِيثَاقَهُمْ, when we took the covenant from the prophets, so the covenant was taken at that level, at the level of the ruh. When we took that covenant from the prophets, and starts with Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, then comes back to Nuh and Ibrahim and Musa and Isa alayhi salam. Now we know them as Anbiya ulul Azm, the 5 Anbiya ulul Azm. However, chronologically speaking, it should have been Nuh, Ibrahim, Musa, Isa, and then Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Whereas the ayah starts with the Prophet. It says, وَمِنْكَ وَمِنْ نُوحٍ وَإِبْرَاهِيمَ وَمُوسَى وَعِيسَى وَأَخَذْنَا مِنْهُمْ مِيثَاقًا غَلِيظًا. So in that order, the narration says that it is because Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam was the first to accept the lordship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and basically the bala, which is also referred to in other ayat as when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asked everybody, Alastu birabbikum. Now, if you read that ayah is very clear that that mithaq, or that question that was asked, was at a realm that the Bani Adam were in dhuhur. Dhuhur means like they were not even born. It's very clear that it's referring to another realm before we came into this world. And we know in this world, God did not address us directly and say, Alastu bi rabbikum. So that Alastu bi rabbikum happened in a different world. And that is referred to by our scholars as the world of Alast. Because God says, Alastu bi rabbikum, am I not your Lord? And they said, Qalu bala. Now some of them, they said bala immediately with no doubt. And amongst them, the first was Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And then other prophets. And then the mithaq was taken and confirmed. وَأَخَذْنَا مِنْهُمْ مِيثَاقًا غَلِيظًا. It was confirmed with the prophets beyond the first question and answer. So everybody was introduced to God as the creator, and this is what we know as the fitrah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in our fitrah, He has already introduced Himself to us in our fitrah, and therefore we know Him. Everybody, by their natural instinct, are looking for God. When they come into this world, they're looking for God. Now, some of them, they lose the address. They don't have the address very clear, and their environment and their bad friends. Quran is very clear about the wrong the friends or the bad influence. They mislead them, so they might make partners for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or declare Him to be the sun or the stars, or declare Him to have partners like the idols and so on. Nevertheless, we know within ourselves that we are created by God, and there is a God above us and so on. And I have mentioned it to mu'mineen and mu'minat many times, that those who are denying, atheists, they're living in a constant battle. Deep inside them, they know. And when they're in deep trouble, they call Him. This is a reality. When they in deep trouble, whatever it might be, an airplane about to crash or a ship about to collapse, they call upon Him. Imam Sadiq alayhi salam once was asked by someone, a sailor, a man who used to go in the oceans, in the sea. He was asked, how do I know God? I want to feel like have a real knowledge of God. He says, have you ever been in a situation that nobody can help you and you could not help yourself? A storm comes, the boat is about to collapse, and he said, or capsize, he said, yes, it has been. He said, when that happened, did your heart cling into a force above all of what was going on, above nature? And did you have hope in that power to save you? He said, yes. He said, that's God. That is God. We all know when in desperate situation, as God often in the Quran tells us, gives us this very example that when they are in the sea and then they are in the storm comes and the waves are higher than them, it's like a cloud above them, that description is given, then what do? They start calling God, da'awullah mukhlisin, with sincerity, extremely sincere, hoping that they will be saved. What happens when they're saved? They مَرَّ كَأَن لَّمْ يَدْعُنَا إِلَى ضُرٍّ مَسَّهُ. He walks away as if he never called. SubhanAllah, we seek refuge to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from such level of ignorance. So in that level, in that realm of creation of ruh, everybody was asked, the covenant was given, and God introduced himself to us. Then some were almost forced to believe. In that level, they denied. قالوا بلى, yes, but some of them said it immediately. Some of them preceded everybody else in saying it. Some of them were given further covenants because they were to be given responsibility of risala. However, some of them did not until they had to, kind of. And that is the initial level of creation. Then the hadith says that they were then in a level of dhilal, another almost like a world of shadows. So they were like shadows. So this reference of dhilal is what is typically used in describing the ruh being like the body, but more like the shadow of the body. And that even when it's depicted by Hollywood and movies, they typically depict the ruh to be like the body, but more of a shadow, hologram, pretty much. Yeah. So when they describe the ruh, they describe it in that manner because of the descriptions given in some of the ahadith, that the ruh is more in that level of shadow or dhilal. During that period, according to the hadith, some of them denied. Some of the people denied. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created the ones who accepted at that level from the purest clay. So their body was created from the purest clay. And the ones who rejected, their body was created from basically the less, the dirtiest, if you wish. This was to match the soul matching the body, putting this. Now, again, this is all in the realm of ruh, before the creation of the body. So now the ayah is saying, فَمَا كَانُوا لِيُؤْمِنُوا بِمَا كَذَّبُوا مِنْ قَبْلِ. They were not going to believe in what they denied before. In the level of the ruh, where things are a lot more clear, the addressing of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to humanity is a lot more clear. And therefore, at that level, if they denied in this dunya, they were not going to believe. And this is what the ayah is referring to. فَمَا كَانُوا لِيُؤْمِنُوا بِمَا كَذَّبُوا مِنْ قَبْلِ كَذَلِكَ نَطْبَعُ عَلَى قُلُوبِ الْمُعْتَدِينَ. And such do we seal over the hearts of transgressors. Mu'tadeen are people who exceed the limits, transgress. Very important to understand this ayah without, God forbid, suggesting that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is somehow sealing over the hearts of these people oppressively. Wal-'ayadu billah. We don't believe that there is any level of dhulm or oppression. Yes, sure.
So, could it be possible that Allah is saying that after the time of Noah and their generations, there came a generation of people that again disbelieved in God, and then after they disbelieved in God, God sent them prophets, but then they denied the prophets. That's why it says because yeah, you do not Allah doesn't send prophets before a group of people disbelieving. Right? So
Okay.
first they disbelieve, and Allah sends prophets.
Yeah, guidance comes first for Ahsan. So the question, if I understood correctly, so after Nuh alayhi salam, some people disbelieved, and God sent a messenger to them or messengers to them, and they denied them after they had disbelieved. So this is the suggestion that could be the meaning, or is it this meaning? Guidance comes first. Okay, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not leave anyone without guidance. So that is a principle that we have in the school of Ahlul Bayt. We believe every nation has either a prophet or a successor of a prophet. They cannot be left to themselves and without guidance. And this is, in fact, we have Quranic reference to that. That رُسُلًا مُبَشِّرِينَ وَمُنذِرِينَ, continuously God sent messengers to give the good news and warn the people, so that people don't have a hujjah. That's why we refer to the Rusul as hujjah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the proof, so that people don't have a proof against God on the day of judgment. بَعْدَ الرُّسُل, after the messengers, they have no excuses. Nobody can say on the day of judgment that I was not guided, I did not receive guidance. Okay, God in every nation, for every generation, He has sent either a messenger or a successor, wasi, of a messenger. So that's one thing. The other thing is the ayah is referring to the people that basically, if we look at the pronoun as referring to the people after after Nuh alayhi salam, therefore both the dhama'ir are referring to them. Both the pronouns are referring to them. So nothing about those who denied before is about the people of Nuh ala nabina wa alayhi salam. فَمَا كَانُوا لِيُؤْمِنُوا فَجَاءُوهُمْ بِالْبَيِّنَاتِ, they came to them with clear proofs. They were not to believe in what they denied before. Now again, if we look at them as the people after Nuh alayhi salam, they didn't have a chance to deny. Deny who? You know, immediately the people of Nuh, they believed, no problem. But denial comes with against a messenger. You're denying who? Denial has to be against a messenger.
Your own
Fatra.
yes.
Yeah, I mean that could be said. That could be said that they denied their fitra. I have not seen that tafsir to be given for it. It seems to be denial in the real sense. فما كانوا ليؤمنوا بما كذبوا من قبل. And so in the real sense, it's not just them denying their fitra. It seems to be more similar to the people of Nuh, how they denied their prophet. These people denied their prophets, and this is what the kadhabu is referring to. Wallahu a'lam. So then, again, the last part is the tricky part. And that is كذلك نطبع على قلوب المعتدين. God's putting a seal over the hearts of a people. Now, in this case, it says the mu'tadin. Is there oppression from God that He's not guiding them? He's sealing over their hearts? Of course not. But how do we understand this? Many ayat are very clear in the fact that God sometimes says He misleads. Sometimes He says He seals over the heart. Sometimes says La yuslihu, and this is coming up, that He does not fix the affairs, okay? And so on. We have references. But then the ayah comes and describes who, okay? So He says He seals over the hearts of who? The transgressors. He does not guide, لا يهدي القوم الظالمين. He does not guide the oppressors. ويضل الله الظالمين. He misleads the oppressors. Mislead in what sense? And we'll come to that. So misleads or seals over the heart are all in the same line, in the sense that no more guidance for them. He allows them to go astray. Not that He wants them to go astray. He allows them. He allows them to go further in their ghay, in their ignorance or in their blindness, okay, and therefore transgression. Here it says نطبع على قلوب المعتدين. The answer to it is in itself. They were mu'tadeen. They were described as mu'tadeen because they continuously transgressed. Transgressed what? What they already knew. They know something and they know the limit. They know that this is a limit and they cross it. You know that this is a limit and you cross it again and again. They gain a title of mu'tadeen. The title of mu'mineen, for example, are because they believed and continuously believed, not just to say it once. No, they believed. It's a state that they've gained, the state of iman. This is the state of these people, is the state of i'tida. They are in the state of mu'tadi. You give them guidance, they're going to try cross it. You give them more guidance, they're going to cross it again. They're going to cross the limits. They're going to continue to sin. Therefore, they are mu'tadeen. And that is why there's a seal over their limits. نطبع على قلوب المعتدين. Next comes ثم بعثنا من بعدهم موسى. We sent Ahsant here. Any questions so far? Okay. So the next one, the next nation is the nation of Musa alayhi salam. Yes? Amazing. Anytime Musa alayhi salam is mentioned, Harun is mentioned. We are these days celebrating the wilaya of Imam Ali alayhi salam, who the Prophet says about him that you to me are, Harun was to Musa alayhi salam, أنت من يا علي أنت مني بمنزلة هارون من موسى. And this hadith أنت مني بمنزلة هارون من موسى happened many times. One of them is when the Prophet was going to Tabuk and asked Imam Ali alayhi salam to stay in Medina. The Imam who had accompanied the Prophet in every battle, every journey, he wanted to accompany, and he was in tears, in fact. And the Prophet ﷺ said, Ya Ali, are you not pleased to be to me like Harun was to Musa? أما يرضيك أن تكون مني بمنزلة هارون من موسى. So what was Harun to Musa alayhi salam? Harun, according to the Holy Quran, was the partner of Musa alayhi salam. Harun was the supporter. Ushdud bihi azri was the partner. وَأَشْرِكْهُ فِي أَمْرِي. And he was also the Khalifa of Musa alayhi salam. When Musa alayhi salam had to go to his appointment for the 30 days and it was completed with 10 days, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَقَالَ مُوسَى لِأَخِيهِ هَارُونَ اخْلُفْنِي فِي قَوْمِي وَأَصْلِحْ وَلَا تَتَّبِعْ سَبِيلَ الْمُفْسِدِينَ. So Harun was also the Khalifa of Musa alayhi salam, although he was the Khalifa for the time of the journey. And then Musa alayhi salam had another Khalifa who was Yusha ibn Nun, who was, because Harun died during the life of Musa alayhi salam. Harun was actually older than Musa alayhi salam, and he passed away during the life of Musa alayhi salam. However, when Musa alayhi salam went for the 30-day appointment, which extended to 40, he did not want to leave his people without somebody who was appointed by him during those 30 days. He was given an appointment of 30 days, and even for that, he was not willing to leave his people without somebody who would represent him, Khalifa. So, and God commanded him, وَقَالَ مُوسَى لِأَخِيهِ هَارُونَ اخْلُفْنِي. And this is a declaration in the Holy Quran of it. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam never left the Ummah without Khalifa. When he went to Tabuk, not knowing how long he was going for, he left Imam Ali alayhi salam in charge of them. And before he departed this world, he declared the Imam in Ghadir Khum. He declared him to be the Wasi, and even not just raised his hand and said, whoever I am the master of Ali is the master, but also he put his own turban on Imam Ali alayhi salam, gave him his own amama. In other words, this is the amama of Risala. You now have that position or that responsibility. You continue my role. This was how Imam Ali alayhi salam was to Rasulullah, like Harun was to Musa alayhi salam. And clearly in this ayah and many other ayat in the Holy Quran, we have them together. اذهبا إلى فرعون. You too go to Fir'aun. Musa and Harun, you too go to Fir'aun and address him. And many other ayat. Here, ثم بعثنا من بعدهم موسى وهارون إلى فرعون وملئه. We sent Musa and Harun to Fir'aun and his people, or the leaders of his people. Mala are suggested to be the people who are the chiefs, the people who are in leadership, or the rich ones, the people who the general public look up to them, and comes from mil'ul ayn. They fill their eyes. You know, you see somebody and you recognize them with your eyes. This recognition is what makes them mala, as opposed to somebody you don't even see them, you don't notice them. So no, these people are noticeable. They have authority, wealth, and so on. So these are referred to as mala. You could say the ministers, the rich individuals, I don't know, whatever it may refer to at that time. Or in our society, we also have mala. ثم بعثنا من بعدهم موسى وهارون إلى فرعون وملئه. Oftentimes, it is not one person who, these are lessons to understand, not one person who would lead a nation on his own or mislead a nation on his own. A dictator has to have people around him. He might be the head of the snake, as they say, but he has the body and the tails, all these people following him. Without them, he could not do anything. Whether it be Fir'aun at his time, or Yazid at his time, Muawiyah at his time, or Saddam at his time, or anyone in today's world, Netanyahu in today's world. There has to be mala, follow people who are following them, allowing them to go in their ghay. So this is important to keep in mind, that the people who are in charge of the affairs of the society, it's not one. Okay, Fir'auna wa mala'ihi. Another important reflection here is that the messengers have to target the leaders first. You know, they were Musa alayhi salam and Harun, they were sent to who? Ila Fir'auna wa mala'ihi. Okay, to the leaders first. Because if you fix that, you can fix everything else. Until you fix that part, you can't get anywhere. Because they continue, you try and guide, and they continue to misguide. So the Prophet ﷺ, he sent the letters to the kings of his time, to the king of Persia, king of Rome, Roman Empire, and so on. He addressed his people. They were the chiefs. He was amongst the elite in Quraysh himself, and his people were the chiefs. And he invited them, and he guided them, or tried to guide them first. They were the initial addressee. And then that's basically the initial level of the Risala after his own self and his own immediate family is Ashira. وَأَنذِرْ عَشِيرَتَكَ الْأَقْرَبِينَ. So first is you address the leaders. فَاسْتَكْبَرُوا. What is the problem with people, and why do they deny their messengers? The most common problem, disease, issue is kibr, arrogance. The Fir'aun, or even back to the time of the creation of Adam and Iblis. Iblis, astakbarta wa kunta min al-'alin. Why did you not do sujood, Iblis? Were you arrogant and amongst those who think highly of themselves? Astakbarta wa kunta min al-'alin. Do you think you are so big and so significant, so important? That's why you denied? And this is the same as those leaders and dictators, oppressors, but the leaders of the people who denied their prophets. Why did they deny? فَاسْتَكْبَرُوا. They were arrogant. That is the biggest problem. The arrogance does not allow them to even use their intellect, humble themselves, and realize that sooner or later we will be 6 feet under. And then we have a day of judgment, and we have to answer for everything that we have done. Absolutely everything we will be questioned about. And so arrogance is a big problem. Inshallah, we pray. Every one of us should always pray and ask and strive to rid ourselves from any level of arrogance. لا يدخل الجنة, in the hadith from Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, it says one who has a tiny bit of arrogance would not be admitted to paradise. Until we purify our hearts from arrogance, from kibr completely, we don't deserve to be, wal-'ayadu billah. We hope that we're not there, we deserve it. But one who does not purify from arrogance does not deserve the neighboring of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because the kibriya belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The being amongst the high, the highness and the significance and the kibr, pride belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. No one should even think that they could share that with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So, فَاسْتَكْبَرُوا. And what else? وَكَانُوا قَوْمًا مُجْرِمِينَ. Ijram is basically crime, criminals. They were criminals. فَاسْتَكْبَرُوا وَكَانُوا قَوْمًا مُجْرِمِينَ. Is there a relationship between the two? Perhaps there is. When one is arrogant, they're more likely to commit crimes. When one is humble, they're less likely to commit crimes against people. if you look at people as the same level as you, in fact, we are advised to treat people the way we like to be treated. Yes? If you feel like you're at the same level as the people, you're less likely to mistreat them, to harm them. You don't like to be harmed, and you understand that they're at the same level. Okay? When we humble ourselves, this is how we look at people, and therefore we're less likely to harm the people. But when we are arrogant, when one is arrogant, they're more likely to harm the people. They're more likely to discriminate against the people. You know, kibr is what comes behind racism and even discrimination on its various levels, because one thinks higher of the other. You know, what's the basis of discrimination? Let's say male against female, or nowadays female against male, or is it there already yet, or not yet? Am I staring something? But you know, sometimes in the process of trying to have the balance, it tips the other way. So I'm not sure if that's happening, but any kind of discrimination. For one to think that they are higher than the other, and therefore they mistreat the other based on the basis of those differences. One race against another race, one color against another color. All of these things are basically the underlying issue in it is kibr. One thinking that I am more significant, or you know, my party is more significant, my color, even my religion. Should we discriminate against others on the basis of their religion? We believe that Islam is correct. Yes? Otherwise, one would be blind. Okay. We're not blind followers, inshallah. We believe. Does it mean that we have the right to think low of others, other groups of faith? This is tricky, I think. Huh? Can we think that we are, can we act arrogantly against them? Obviously, you would say no. Okay. So if I think that I am better, I am acting in a way arrogant. I am following the true faith is one thing, but am I better? The group of faith that I belong to, or that I am adhering to, and I'd like to follow, is the truth. Okay? But am I better as an individual? As a human being, am I better? And I shared with you the hadith from Imam Rada alayhi salam, that basically the last word of the Imam, he says, لا يكمل عقل امرئ أو لا يتم. The intellect of an individual is not completed unless they have 10 characteristics. The last one, he says, والعاشرة, he says, as for the 10th, how would you know what the 10th is? In other words, it is very significant. And he says, he does not look at anyone except that he says they are better than me. هو خير مني. They are better than me. What if they belong to another group of faith? Maybe they'll have a better ending. Maybe their heart is pure and my heart is not as pure as theirs. So they're always thinking that others are even better, giving people the benefit of the doubt, thinking that they could be in a better position, never arrogant against anybody. Because that is the basis of mistreating people. That is the basis of harming people. Yes.
You're saying arrogance causes people to mistreat others. I've heard that, for example, when there's bullying in schools, that a lot of the times it's actually because the person feels worse about themselves and doesn't see themselves, that they're insecure, basically, and not causing people.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, I'm not suggesting that that's the only reason why people harm others, but one of the most common reasons why nations harm other nations, dictators harm their people, one of the most, it's arrogance, okay? Now, underlying issues behind arrogance, psychologically, they might come and suggest, okay, because they feel some level of insecurity or inferiority, and they're trying to make up for it. They're acting up in this way, but essentially they're acting with arrogance. That what's coming out is arrogance. Okay, that feeling of as Allah Subhanahu wa Taala says to Iblis, "Astakbarta wa kunta min al-alin," to feel like I'm higher. Okay, so they're trying to get in a higher position. They're being arrogant and trying to. Now, okay, they might have some insecurities, childhood traumas, whatever it might be, but that's one way it's coming out. The other thing we have to understand is that I mean, that's not the only reason why people harm other people, and there might be other underlying issues with bullies and so on. It's beyond just one small issue or one bullies. I mean, there are a lot of studies why it happens and how they are, at home, and sometimes they're beaten at home, therefore they feel like they want to beat others and so on. So there are a lot of issues that come with it, and it could be a result of even a parent who has that arrogance and therefore mistreatment of, for instance, in some cases, insecurities come from a troubled home, that abuse of one parent of the other parent. In this case, mostly, I guess, the men against the father against the mother. And so the child growing in that environment sees that, one has that arrogance. So that exposure to an arrogant individual creates a monster, at school. So again, you'll find that a lot of it comes back to the characteristic of kibr, arrogance. But I'm not suggesting that that's the only reason. I hope that addresses the. Yes. Yeah. 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 Avoid. Yeah. 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 To be honest, my humble opinion on children and schooling is that children should not be exposed at that very young level to all these confusing ideas and ideologies. That's my humble opinion. I do not advise parents to send their kids to those environments at a very young age. Kids need clean environments. Kids are like sponges. It is hard for them to handle all what's out there. Now they may survive. I'm not saying they're all going to, but that's not guaranteed. And why would I put my child in the beach hoping that he learned how to swim a little bit, he'll survive? okay, or in deep sea, hoping that he'll survive. I have to be more protective of my child. My advice for the believers is that try and put your kids in faith-based schools if Islamic schools are not available. If they are available, then Islamic schools are the better option. If not faith-based, those environments where God is completely out of the equation are not healthy. I did not have, initially, I didn't think of it in this way. And my eldest, who's now almost 20, he was at the time 4. And he went to a school, public school, and in Sydney. And the law is teachers are not allowed to speak about God and faith and what they believe. So even if the teacher is a Christian, for instance, she's not allowed to speak about her faith and her beliefs. And there was a kid from a certain part of the world where they're mostly atheists. Sydney was filled with that population. And so, the kid was another child who was not a believer. And I remember my son came home. I remember this incident very clearly. It's almost like it was yesterday. He came home and he said, Baba, isn't it that all the big people, he called them like adults, he wanted to say, they know that God is there and there's hell and heaven and so on. I said, unfortunately, not all of them know that. Why? What happened? So he said, I was speaking to this kid, he named the kid his friend or his classmate. And I was telling him that God is there is hell, there's heaven. I was telling him all these things, and he was saying, no, there's just stories in the books. And so I told him, let's go and ask the teacher. And he thought the teacher now is going to tell him, teachers know everything, that's how kids, they start looking up to teachers know everything. So he thought, now I will ask the teacher and it'll be all clear, and that other person will be defeated, his argument will. But then to his surprise, the teacher says, we don't know. And the teacher had to be accommodating to both and cannot speak about faith. And that is when I realized I cannot send my kids to an environment where God is out of the equation. So it's second best. Yeah. Christian school, faith-based school, if not Muslim school. That's it is too dangerous for our kids. And they don't need exposure at that level. They can call it brainwashing or whatever. Everybody does. We all train our kids in a certain way and teach them and discipline them. We don't force them, but we have to expose them to the right things and make sure they don't get exposure at that early age, because it is extremely dangerous. Now, once they are a little older, and as they see things and they witness things, we share stories of the prophets and how the people at the time of the prophets denied and so on. So they know that there are people who would deny. How to mingle and interact with these people, we have to also educate them and teach them, especially as they get closer to the college and university age. They need to know how to handle themselves around people of other groups of faith or other religions. Not that you're superior, not that we're not educating them to have a sense of superiority or we are better, okay? But we have our beliefs and principles, and this is definitely the true faith. We have to have confidence in our faith. This is the true faith. Now that person, we don't judge them, okay? They may have a clean heart better than ours. They may, their exposure is different. We don't judge them. We're not going to be judgmental of people, but we have to make sure that we are firm on our beliefs, and that happens as they grow older. They're able to handle that. I don't know. This may have taken a little bit of time, but this is important. I think another example that made me realize how significant teachers are in the life of our children, teachers specifically. There was a situation, a teacher, there was a Muslim school, but the teacher was not a Muslim. And they had you know how they have show and tell, you know, this thing where you take something. So it was Muharram, and my son came, one of my, it was again my eldest at the time. He came and asked me for some show and tell, something for show and tell. So we have this thing that the headband that they wear in Muharram, which has the name of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. So I said, take this one and talk about it, okay? Why we wear it this time. We remember the grandson of the Prophet and his sacrifice and so on. So you can speak about these things. He said, but my teacher is not a Muslim. I said, it's okay. This is what show and tell is all about. I said, if you take your toy, does your teacher have that toy and play with it? Maybe not. Does she like that toy and play with it? Maybe not. So she doesn't have to agree with everything that you do. He refused. He could not share something of, you know, faith related thing with a teacher who doesn't agree with it. So again, realized and it was reconfirmed for me the significance of the teacher and how influential is the teacher in the life of children. Even you know, a relative who was being encouraged to wear hijab had a teacher who was not hijabi and was a Muslim and was saying, well, she is so nice. So, you know, in other words, why should I? You know, teachers are very influential, putting our children in environments where it's toxic, God is not there. Many teachers themselves are not just non-believers, but also they have certain orientations that we don't necessarily agree with, or we definitely don't encourage, and so on. So there are a lot of, I think, dangers and risks with putting kids in non-Islamic or non-religious environment. I hope that answers the question. Sorry. We'll continue. ثم بعثنا موسى وهارون فاستكبروا وكانوا قوما مجرمين. We said they were arrogant and they were a people who were criminals. They were guilty of many crimes. مجرمين. What happened? Now, question, is it possible for these people to be guided? Of course. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, even about Fir'aun, he says, اذهبا إلى فرعون, go to Fir'aun. Then he says to Musa and Harun, قولا له قولا لينا. Speak to him softly. Speak to him with kindness and softness. Why? Perhaps that could لعله. So perhaps that could make him remember or fear, be concerned about his duty to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So you speak to people, even at that level, you speak to them with kindness, softness, and there is a possibility that some of them would be guided. In fact, in this story, we have a very, very great example of that happening. So amongst the Mala of Fir'aun, there were a people, again, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent them to Fir'aun wa mala'ihi. Amongst his Mala, or amongst the chiefs in Fir'aun's circles, were the magicians. Yeah, magicians were of very high status at that time, and when they were invited, they were promised high status as well. They asked, أَإِنَّ لَنَا لَأَجْرًا? Do we have a reward if we are the winners? He says, yes, you will have a reward, and more than that, you will be amongst the muqarrabeen. You will be amongst those who are very close to the king, to Fir'aun. So that was greater than just monetary rewards that they may have received or they may have been promised. فلما جاءهم الحق من عندنا قالوا إن هذا لسحر مبين. And that's why they brought the magicians when they were faced with the truth. الحق من عندنا, from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They said this is clear magic, yeah, or sorcery as they may call it. So they said that this is not truth. They denied it based on the fact that they suggested that it's magic or sorcery. Now, why? Because it looked so much like truth. It looked like haqq. And this is what they did to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. When he brought the Quran, what did they say? Quran is truth. Quran is absolute truth. But they said he is a magician and he is muallam, somebody's teaching him. Muallamun, and he's mad, majnoon, and this is magic. He's doing some sort of magic over us. Because it was so beautiful, the truth was clear in it. In order to deflect, they used the term that this is sahir. And similarly, the people of Musa alayhi salam, Musa and Harun, when they came to them with truth, فَلَمَّا جَاءَهُمُ الْحَقِّ حَقُّ مِنْ عِنْدِنَا, it was from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala clearly. Again, these are, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is drawing the parables, okay? So, Quran is truth from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What Musa alayhi salam and Harun presented to Fir'aun was also truth from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. فَلَمَّا جَاءَهُمُ الْحَقُّ مِنْ عِنْدِنَا قَالُوا, they said, إِنَّ هَذَا لَسِحْرٌ مُبِينٌ. This is clearly a very, a clear magic or sorcery. And so the response from Musa alayhi salam, قال موسى أتقولون للحق لما جاءكم. Musa said, أتقولون للحق لما جاءكم أسحر هذا ولا يفلح الساحرون. Amazing. He said, so many times he asks questioning. In other words, it is really a shock to him, and he is showing them that there are so many levels to question you upon. One, he starts with ataquluna. Do you say? And what did they say? They said it is magic. So do you say about truth? للحق لما جاءكم. And then he says asihrun. Is it magic? So ataquluna للحق لما جاءكم. Sihr would have been enough. But there's another Is it magic? So it is basically him denying it being magic on every level. Okay? There's no possibility of that. أَتَقُولُونَ لِلْحَقِّ لَمَّا جَاءَكُمْ. When truth has come to you. So he is making it clear that truth has come to you. The people around Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when they were listening to the Quran, they were amazed by it. They would actually, even those who continuously denied, they would sit and listen. Some of them would sit and hide so that nobody sees that they are listening and they are mesmerized by the beauty of the Quran. But they were there sitting and listening. If it was words of Majnoon, for instance, they would not be interested. If it was a mad person speaking, they would not be interested. If it was mu'allamun, they would go to the teacher. If he's being taught by somebody, they should go to the teacher. Where is his teacher? You all know that he was never taught by anybody. He did not have a teacher. That's why he's referred to as the ummi, the one who did not have a teacher. So he never went to a school, never had a teacher, and he is saying all these beautiful things. It's haqq. أَتَقُولُونَ لِلْحَقِّ. Again, this surah is addressing Quraysh and giving them the example and the similarities from the stories of the previous messengers. So he says, أَتَقُولُونَ لِلْحَقِّ لَمَّا جَاءَكُمْ أَسِحْرٌ هَذَا وَلَا يُفْلِحُ السَّاحِرُونَ. A declaration is made. Yes.
And so, in the other verse about the story of Prophet Moses, they were saying, does that refer to the miracle that he was performing? The stick?
In other verses, which one? In this
the same verse.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, in this, it's suggested that in this verse, in this ayah, haq is referring to the miracle that he was performing. Not just the stick, but also the other, also the white hand or the clean hand after it being harmed and so on. So like him and putting his hand and curing it completely and clear with no harm, no issues, and also the his staff or his stick that would miraculously turn into the serpent or the snake. Now this is a suggestion. Does it mean that it's limited to that? It doesn't have to be limited to that. The truth that came from him, the truth that came through his words even, okay? His words are the words of a messenger. They're miracles, okay? However, what is clear from their perspective is that you're a magician, okay? Now one could also argue that a magician, a well-experienced magician, is well-spoken as well. Okay, so they're suggesting that even the way he presents himself, the speech that he has, all of this, which is according to Quran, it's haqq from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. According to them, it's sihr. But the clear part is the miracle that he was performing, the staff and the hand.
Was also one thing I wanted to ask is that also Prophet Moses says that what you guys are performing is a magic. So do you think how was he able to distinguish between that magic and what he was doing as a miracle?
That he said to the magicians, you mean when later on when he knew that they don't have, they're not so anything that is of that level, basically anything paranatural, okay, happens either as a gift from God, as a proof of prophecy or some proof from God for a virtuous person, wali, okay? So it's not limited to prophets. It can be a virtuous person, but a magician who is coming to serve Fir'aun to prove Fir'aun right and confirm Fir'aun's authority against the messenger of God, that's not a virtuous person. So that's what they're doing is not a gift from God. God is telling him, you challenge them and you will be the victorious. So he obviously knows that what they're doing is not haq. It's mad, it's sorcery. It's basically pulling the wool over people's eyes.
Yeah. I also had a teacher talking about this verse.
Yeah.
I just wanted to mention that point because it was interesting.
Sure.
They said that what the magicians in front of Prophet did was not actually turning those sticks into serpents and snakes.
Yeah.
It was how to appear to those people.
Yeah. That's what Quran says. Yeah.
You do something, but it's not actually happening.
Yeah. So
it actually happened. That's why the magicians also believe it because they do this actually happening.
Exactly. Yeah. So Quran is very clear that saharu a'yun an-nas. They actually what typically is said, pull the wool over people's eyes. They fooled people with something that made them see something. Okay, they saw it in a certain way, but it was not. Okay. Now, how did he distinguish that? He knew he's a prophet of God. God told him, you are going to be victorious. In fact, in one ayah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, there are many ayat about this story. This particular surah or this section is very brief. There are some, for instance, in Surah Al-Qasas or in some other ayat, we have more details on the story. So, for instance, one of them says that Musa alayhi salam فَأَوْجَسَ فِي نَفْسِهِ خِيفَةً. He actually was worried. Okay, not that's khifa is not awjasa fi nafsi. It's more like worry. Okay, scared, worried. You could say why? He's not scared for himself. He was worried, and he doesn't doubt that that what he has is truth, and what they have is falsehood. But what he was worried is that they actually could affect people in a way that they could win. Okay, they could win this whole argument or challenge. Okay, because there was a challenge that you brought something, you say it's a miracle. Now we have magicians and they can do the same thing. Okay, and he was worried that that could happen, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, don't even worry about it. Okay, you are innaka antal a'la. You will have the upper hand. Today you will have the upper hand. And so when he threw them, it basically consumed what they had made and never even gave them out. Consumed them, and he had it back in his hand. According to the riwayah, it never came out. That was it. It's basically, and it didn't increase in size or anything. Again, this is a miracle of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So قال موسى تقولون الحق لما جاءكم أسحر هذا ولا يفلح الساحرون. Very important that the magicians or people who are fooling people, the average people, with their sorcery and tricks. They're not really miracles, they are tricks that they're playing on the people, making them believe that this is what's happening. I don't know if you've seen, there are people nowadays who are exposing some of those tricks that they do in the circus. In the circus they have this cutting of the body and so on. And there are people who come and take videos of how this is done, exposing these tricks. So, they break somebody, they cut it in half, and then they take the boxes aside, and then they show that in the box there are two people, very fit people that are sitting in a certain way. Or, different tricks, and they show how they are done and how they're made. So this is all the magic or the sorcery that people do. All of this is, all of these tricks are, they have a short life. Their lifespan is very short. Sooner or later, people realize that there's no truth to this. So, وَلَا يُفْلِحُ السَّاحِرُونَ, in this case, it could be also a promise from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that was given to Musa alayhi salam, and Musa alayhi salam already gave this response and made this statement to the magicians and to Pharaoh at that time, that as a sahir I cannot be victorious. Okay, as a magician cannot be victorious. Someone who fools the people to try and prove his point is not going to be victorious. And this is why he was confident when they came that they will be exposed. وَلَا يُفْلِحُ السَّاحِرُونَ. He made that very general statement. Again, all of this is to draw the parable between the nation of Musa alayhi salam and the nation of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. All of this is to remind the people at the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam that this is a true message from God. Quran is a true message from God. It's not a work of a magician who is being taught by someone else and who is also mad. I mean, you have to make up your mind. Is he taught or is he mad? Okay, this is magic, and what he's saying is taught by somebody, but he's mad, he's just saying things. I mean, if he's mad, it shouldn't make any sense. And if it's making sense that he is taught by somebody, then who is this somebody that he is taught by? Regardless, all of this is to draw parables and wake the people up. قالوا أجئتنا. We have time? Yeah. Any questions? Yeah. Yeah.
Obviously there are other verses that can happen for all the people, and you also mentioned that you often give still after getting on it. So, and then also I'm just kind of thinking politically and how to take the lesson into today. There's the idea of top down, but then there's also the grassroots.
Yeah. There's definitely a big responsibility upon both. Quran speaks of الذين اتبعوا and الذين اتبعوا, those who were followed and those who followed. Okay, so both the followers and the leaders. And in fact, there are verses in the Holy Quran about them when they are admitted to hellfire, those who were leading to bad deeds and those who followed them and did the bad deeds. And there's a conversation about them in hellfire. So those who followed, they try to put all the responsibility on the ones who led them. And those who led, they try to dissociate themselves from the ones who followed them. Okay, so the ones who led would say, we didn't force you. Okay, and the other ones would say it was all you. And then there are some verses that say that those who followed, they say, oh Lord, these are the ones who deceived us. Give them twice as much punishment. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, for every one of you, there's twice as much. لِكُلٍّ ضَعْفٍ. Now why? You might wonder why. So now, they are not going to carry these guys' sins. Nobody will carry no one's sin. وَلَا تَزِرُ وَازِرَةٌ وِزْرَ أُخْرَى. They have the punishment of doing the wrong thing and the punishment of misguiding. Okay, misguiding is in itself is a bad deed. These guys, they have the punishment of the wrong thing, and then the other one is allowing these ones to, the grassroots, as you mentioned, allowing these ones to be in charge and to mislead. Okay, so they're carrying their own burdens. The burden of allowing the wrong leaders to be in charge, and the burden of committing the sins. These guys have the burden of committing the sins and the burden of misleading. Okay, that is on them. Not that the sin of these guys is on this. I hope that. So everybody has a responsibility in today's society. If I am in a government where the leader, MBS, is supporting a genocide, okay, and I'm a member of that society, I have to speak out. Okay, if that nation did not allow this individual to be in charge of the nation, they would not be in charge. Okay, now if they were really weak to the point where they couldn't do anything, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows of that. But if they were able to do something and they didn't, because it's more convenient to say nothing and just go on with our lives, because business is good, the economy is good, everything's good, so let's just go on with our lives and just feel bad for these people, or even don't even look at it, or even justify why they are going through this. They deserve it. This is the next step. They start suggesting that they deserve it. They wouldn't be going through it if they didn't deserve it. They deserve it. Why? For some reason. What that reason is. Or the next one is to try and make a distinction based on again, the reason why many nations are able to, or many people are able to harm others is discrimination, racism, and so many categories that they create because they're not the same as us. Okay, so either they're of a different color, different border, even. So we create the borders, and so they're different people, even though they share the same religion, even same sect, even the same language. Even then, we have to create some border to make a distinction, to not feel bad about what's happening to them. So this is an issue that people continue to have in today's society, as well as in the history of human beings or mankind. We've always had this problem, leaders and followers. Now, leaders have a big role to play. That is why, and it's easier to change things if the leader changes. The leader at the time of Nabiullah Yusuf, ala nabina wa alayhi salam, became a believer. As a result, Yusuf alayhi salam became Aziz of Misr, like the highest minister, okay, of Misr. And the people at that time became believers. Okay. According to narrations, soon after that particular Pharaoh died, the next one who came reverted to their idol worshipping and to their basically old beliefs, and Bani Israel were made as slaves. They changed their circumstances from being in a very high position, respected, to slaves. Okay, again, leader. But who did that on his own? No. There are also the priests, the high priests of the temple, and some of the leaders who were still, some of those elite who were still stuck in their jahiliyyah, their beliefs and so on. Same as the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Target the leaders, and this is why the Prophet would, even some of the marriages of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam happened because of that. God wanted him to get them closer, and that way they more and more people will accept and will join. But soon after he departed this world, some of those who were stuck in their ways from Bani Umayyah and so on, they changed the situation to their own benefits and so on. So leaders have always, and obviously the wars that occurred and the killings and even the killing of his own grandson tells us that what thing did go wrong. I mean, it cannot be possible that the master of youth of paradise in paradise is massacred in a good environment. The environment did turn toxic after the Prophet ﷺ. Who did that? Some of the leaders. And general masses were. But what do we say in Ziyarat Ashura? There are people who were far from the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala because they heard and did nothing about it. سمعت لذلك فرضيت به. So, there's a responsibility from the ones who they hear and do nothing about basically the population who is capable of changing the situation and doesn't do anything about it. They do have a responsibility. And then there's a responsibility, obviously, on the leaders. Why target the leaders? It's because it's easier than to influence everybody else. If you are able to influence the leader, in fact, we went to a camp many years ago, and I was told that this kid, be very careful. This kid, last camp, he was trouble. He did so much mischief and whatever. So I said, okay, put him in my room, in my team. And what I did, and they said he was like almost like a gang leader. Okay, they said be careful of this like group, and especially this one. This is their leader. He was a gang. So don't worry about it. So what I did is I called this particular kid and I told him, I want you to help me. I want you to be in charge of certain things. Time for sleep, I want you to be in charge. Time for waking up, you're in charge. I gave him a few responsibilities. Now, typically, when you give someone a responsibility, they, especially someone who wants to be a leader, okay, they went from a gang leader to a leader in a good way. And by him being responsible, everything was beautiful. He mobilized his people, those the ones whom they were mischievous and were creating problems. He mobilized them. He was the leader. He mobilized them in a positive way. So typically, if you are able to influence the leader, you will be able to influence the everybody else, the entire population, which is why the appointment is ila Fir'auna wa mala'ihi, Musa and Harun to Fir'aun and his mala. I think it's the time for the okay. Ahsant. So I guess we'll suffice with these ayat. Any questions on these so far? Comments, questions? Yeah. Ahsant. So the youth, you have any questions? MashaAllah, we have a good number of youth today, huh? Yes, Muhammad Ali. Yeah.
How long has the war with Israel and Palestine been going on?
The war in Palestine. I believe it started in the 40s. 1940s. Is that correct? Okay. Yeah.
They became corrupt because they didn't have a leader at the time.
Yeah. So because they didn't follow their messengers, and so they killed many of their messengers, by the way. That's their biggest problem. Yeah. They killed they were described as continuously killing their messengers. Yes. Their main, they're referred to as Bani Israel because they're the children of the Prophet Yaqub, ala nabina wa alayhi salam. He's also known as Israel. And so they are the children of Israel. They were, in fact, we just mentioned that they came to Egypt through their brother Yusuf, ala nabina wa alayhi salam, who was also a prophet of God. And they were leaders at the time of Yusuf alayhi salam. And then eventually they became enslaved until Musa alayhi salam saved them. Musa and Harun came to Fir'aun and warned him. Eventually, God made Fir'aun and his army drown and saved Bani Israel. They came back to the land that was closer to today's Palestine. However, they did not have a kingdom and a place because they were not willing to fight. So they were lost for many years without a home, and eventually they were forgiven. They decided to fight their enemy, and they had a home. Then they had kings, like Dawood alayhi salam became a king, and after him Sulaiman alayhi salam al nabina wa alayhi salam became also a king. They were prophets and kings, and they were special in what? Who knows what was they special in? Dawood and Sulaiman alayhi salam. What was special about them? Anyone? To the Ahsantum. Yes. So Dawood alayhi salam had, when he would recite his songs, the mountains and the birds and everything would be reciting with him. And Sulaiman alayhi salam had authority over the jinn. They were working for him, making his the castle and the different structures that he was they were making for him. And they both were able to speak. عُلِّمْنَا مَنْطِقَ الطَّيْرِ. They were both able to speak to birds and animals and understand even the communication of ants and insects. Sulaiman alayhi salam was able to understand the communication of the ant when he came, and one of the ants said, "Be careful, don't be stepped over by Sulaiman and his army." Yeah, this is the reason why the surah that mentions his story is named as Surah An-Naml. Okay, they came to a Wad An-Naml. Where this Wad An-Naml is, I don't know. How many ants were in there to be called the Valley of Naml? I don't know. Allahu A'lam. There are suggestions in narrations, but we don't have a clear answer of where these places are. Any other questions or comments?
Quick question, but probably very long answer.
Yeah.
So earlier we were talking about the Al-Astabara.
Yes, yes.
So, prior to that, we were saying that body and kind of roh.
Yeah.
So in the Tafseer before that Al-Astabara, I was looking at one of the Tafseer, and then but I think I'm not completely sure, but it was probably saying that this is just what's in the Fitra. It wasn't like a communication the way we think. So
Yeah.
it's basically like hardwired into our group. Just wanted to know like
If it's in the Fitra or was there an actual? Yeah. So there are different. So the question, I guess, to just reiterate, the question is regarding the time or the realm where God addressed all of mankind, asking them, "Am I not your Lord? Alastu bi rabbikum?" And so whether that was an actual conversation that occurred, or was it something that is referring to our natural instinct, and therefore it's just more like a programming thing. The way I'm getting it is more like a program, a chip. Okay, you put a chip in our
You're
hardwired. Yes, yes. Yeah, it appears from the ayah that there is a time that happened. Okay, it's not just something that was as we are. Every single individual is created, put this chip in them. Okay, hardwired, and that's it. No, there's a time that happened. Okay, and that's why our scholars, many of our scholars, I don't know if I can say majority, but most of our scholars, when they came to this, based on the riwayat that we have also, they suggest that there was a time, a particular time in the time of the creation of Ruh, that they were addressed. There's wa'idh, if I can find the ayah.
It's a past tense.
Yeah, no, yes, not just the past tense issue there. When okay, in Surah Al-A'raf, ayah 172, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَإِذْ أَخَذَ رَبُّكَ مِنْ بَنِي آدَمَ مِنْ ظُهُورِهِمْ ذُرِّيَّتَهُمْ وَأَشْهَدَهُمْ عَلَى أَنفُسِهِمْ أَلَسْتُ بِرَبِّكُمْ. And when your Lord took from the children of Adam from their backs, we said ظهورهم is basically before, whenever ظهور is mentioned, it's basically the time where we were before our creation physically, okay, before our physical coming or existence. Their descendants, so all of them, and made them bear witness, وَأَشْهَدَهُمْ عَلَى أَنفُسِهِمْ أَلَسْتُ بِرَبِّكُمْ, am I not your Lord? And they said, yes. قالوا بلى شهدنا أن تقولوا يوم القيامة إنا كنا عن هذا غافلين. That this was done so that on the day of judgment, nobody can say, we didn't know that. غافلين means like unaware, heedless. So that this covenant was made so that, now, did it happen all at the same time? One possibility. Another possibility is as the stage of the creation of the body is closer, before the creation of the body, it's happening. Okay? مِنْ ظُهُورِهِمْ ذُرِّيَّةً. So that it's mentioning the ancestors and their descendants. It seems to be all. You know, that everybody there at the realm of the creation, and the question was given. Now, again, we don't fully have, we cannot fully understand that realm. And so we have some ahadith about it, some ayat, some ahadith, and imagination. Okay, we're imagining how it could be. But do we know exactly where, when, at which level? It seems to be more than just a hardwired chip thing. It seems to be more of a question. Now, how did God address all of humanity or the souls, the ruh at that time? Is it a voice? No, of course, we know that. So how do we get the information? Sometimes I don't mind the hardwire or computer examples, because it does give us another perspective, another way of learning. So one way of learning is where you hear it, you see it, it's physical. Another way of learning is, you have information download and in fact, which one is faster learning? Okay. Now, if you look at the way, and this is what we have description of how God taught his messenger, okay, and how the messenger taught his Ahlul Bayt. Yeah. Zuqqul ilma zaqqa. He fed him knowledge. Okay. It wasn't like a teacher sits and says, now for the Prophet to memorize the Quran, did he have to sit and memorize like we do? Okay, we start saying we have to read the ayah 10 times and then we memorize it, and then if we don't practice it another few days, we forget it. Okay, even half of the whole Quran, if they want to keep the hifz, they have to keep doing khatam once a day or once every 2-3 days, khatam of the whole Quran. Okay, they have to keep reciting to keep it, otherwise they'll forget it. Okay, even chapters that I know from experience, because I did hifz of every single chapter at some point. So you could say a hafid in every individual surahs, but I didn't maintain all of them. And now if you ask me, yes, I know what's there, what's before, what's after, but can I recite the whole thing? Some chapters yes, sometimes chapters no, because of practice. But was the Prophet like that? Never. Never. Did he have to practice to keep knowing the Quran of by heart? No. So he learned it differently. Okay, so there's a different level of learning, different layer of learning that's completely different. Okay, that was fed to him, to his ruh, in a level where he would tell the people. And by the way, the revelation of the Quran happened in Laylatul Qadr. Yeah, and then we know that Tanzil happened over 23 years. Okay, in Laylatul Qadr, the Prophet had the full Quran. Which Laylatul Qadr? Allahu A'lam. He had the full Quran. Now you might say, but he did. No, he knew of every single ayah in the Quran from the beginning. Do we have Quranic proof? Yes, we do. Quran says to him, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran says to him, don't rush saying it until we tell you. Huh? لا تحرك به لسانك لتعجل به. What does that mean? He could say it before. So that angel coming to him every now and then and telling him, read this, he's telling him to read what he already knew. And that brings me back to when he was told Iqra. In the school of Ahlul Bayt, when he was told Iqra, he did not have any hesitation and he recited. Yes? In other schools that were influenced, unfortunately, by Bani Umayyah, who were his enemies, it was suggested that the Prophet did not know how to read, did not know what is happening. He got confused. He had to go to his wife. His wife had to tell him, no, it seems like it's the angel, but let's confirm. They went to an imaginary figure. They say her cousin Waraqa ibn Nawfal. History doesn't have much about him. They went to him and he said, no, it seems like you have been addressed by the angel. Subhanallah. The messenger doesn't know. And his wife or her cousin has to help him to figure who's the angel and who's the devil. Now this is definitely against what the Quran itself is saying. The Quran is saying the Prophet had the Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, don't rush, we tell you. Don't rush what? لا تحرك به. Do not move your tongue with the Quran. Don't rush saying things from yourself. No. Don't move your tongue with the Quran until we tell you. لا تحرك به لسانك لتعجل به. إن علينا جمعه. The compilation of the Quran is upon us and the recitation of the Quran is upon us. And this is why in the school of Ahlul Bayt we believe the Quran was compiled by who? By Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It was referred to as kitab because it was compiled by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, not after Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So the learning of the ruh is there. It's different. Alastu bi rabbikum. How does it happen? Different. You could call it, I don't know, downloading some knowledge into Allahu Alam. How does it happen? We don't know. Inshallah, we have, I think we don't have the, all right. We'll summarize. But let's do a refresher on the ahadith that we already did. Who can help me with the ahadith that we did? Yes. أحسن. So ليس الشديد بالصرعة إنما من ملك نفسه عند الغضب. The tough one is not one who can pin the others down. It's the one who can control his anger. Very good. And what about the other hadith? We did another hadith, no? Was it about knowledge? Yeah. Yes. So the Quran tells us, "Utlub al-ilma." The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, tells us, "Utlub al-ilma min al-mahdi ila al-lahd." Seek knowledge from the cradle to the grave. And yes, you can learn in the cradle. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.